in the Lucian and the Renekton.
So with the Ashe band, I think Lilia is the obvious first pick now. The Ziggs could also be powerful too. I think Lilia is the obvious first pick, unless you want to go towards the Leona. So Leona is still going to be that choice, and now it's over to Anyone's Legend to see what their first picks are.
They just go with their own version of Engage as they get the Sejuani Yone combo here. It's been something that they've been really willing to go through. I mean, both these mid laners have been loving the Yone, but we are just firing it off here. And speaking of fire, it's the Rumble and the Tristana for LNG.
Rumble and Tristana both nerfed on this patch, but still strong. In fact, actually, I think that the nerfs to these champions is good for some players because they're already good enough at these champions to make them work through the nerfs, and now they're just going to be banned less. Scout didn't really get to play much Tristana this year. He was one of the best Tristanas in the league last year. He's very good at getting those pushing lanes, and against the Yone, you push in the Yone very, very hard, and you can control him in side lanes. So now we'll see with LNG with two very powerful solo lane lock-ins, whether that will fix some of their mid-game issues so they can get those strong individual matchups rolling and giving them some breathing room on the map, which they didn't have in that first game.
Also, just love to see all that focus down towards bot side here. Try to take away any of those big power potentials for Gala and Hope. I got to throw a lot of respect Hope's way for the arrows he was able to land last time around, but being able to take maybe more of a shot calling leadership position from that ADC role. He is also just ruthless in the ADC position too. He at the beginning of this split was a major reason why AL was able to close out a lot of their games, but now we'll see if it continues to be the focus down there, and it is. The Kaisa also joining the roster of bans.
A lot of AD carry bans. I mean, of course the Lucian doesn't really count a spot lane pick right now, so now you're asking yourself, okay, well, what's left on the table? We might be getting to the point where, you know, Senna could be a pretty good lock-in, could lock in an extra tank frontline for one of these teams, potentially for LNG. That'd be, well, no, not for LNG, because they have the Leona. You don't really want to go towards that. So maybe for AL, they can go towards that that Senna if they want to have another tank frontline. They'd be quite low on damage if they did that, though, so that loses value. Varus, not honestly not great for either of these teams either, because there's an Equalizer and a Solar Flare on one side and the Yone on the other, so you're really starting to lose a lot of powerful AD carries at this point. You're going to have to start digging deeper into the champion pool.
I want to see the Jhin. Oh, no, I wanted to say it before it got like it.
They beat you to the punch, buddy.
Jhin was also something that we've been seeing here recently as well. We actually saw it mid lane by Insanity earlier in the LCS, by the way. Absolutely crazy, man. Love that guy. But we'll see what the answer is going to be, because now you're looking at Hope to again be in a very utilitarian style for this ADC position and have a lot of the setup for the other pieces around him. I will also say Jhin doesn't necessarily like Xayah.
No, Jhin can sometimes be good into the Xayah because you can at least play from outside of her auto attack range. You can do force her ult by comboing up. The problem is that you just don't necessarily have the same kind of wave control that Xayah can do at some points in the game as well. Plus, Xayah just kills frontlines better. If you go front to back, Xayah can hit the tanks harder than the Jhin can, obviously. And with the Ivern being put through, it's going to be harder to cut through that Leona. There isn't a true tank outside of that Leona, but if LNG can put Daisy down, it can give a lot of issues to AL, who don't really want to be sitting around trying to cut through that as well.
I think you see a very obvious game plan right now for LNG. They do want to front to back. They do want to keep their double marksman safe here and kind of turtle up and get the damage down, the sustained damage that they're going to have plenty of. Anyone's Legend, they can't do that. They need to get to the backline in some way, shape, or form. It's going to be a little bit difficult with the tools they have available to them, but they do have some of those skip the front line dive tools.
Yeah, so will it be a battle of front to backs? Will it come down to the side lanes a little earlier? Definitely helps in the last game for Anyone's Legend. They don't have the Shyvana this time. They won't have that same kind of X factor coming out from the jungle. If they can get themselves this Yone into a good position where he can have a value in a side lane, maybe Shanks can give themselves a leg up against LNG in a style which LNG have started to gain more and more power of. That Rumble and the Tristana, very, very powerful for them in that mid game where they suffered in that game 1.
LNG are not shying away from long series in this Rumble stage. They've had a ton of 3 gamers here, and they're going to need to do that again if they want a hope of locking that top 2 in the LPL Gauntlet playoffs. This is the last series for LNG, and they already faltered once. Anyone's Legend picking that one up and running with it. We'll see what Game 2 has in store. having a little bit of fun with it. Love to see it. But I also want to talk more so about these jungle matchups. It is Croco who will maybe have more of the heavy hand in the conversation, but WeiWei can also be pretty active.
Yeah, and Ivan is pretty good against Sejuani in some ways because so Sejuani's ult will fly through Daisy, but Daisy can then stand between Sejuani and her team if she jumps over it. So there's definitely some cases where in team fights the Ivan can have a lot of value there, in kind of giving that buffer between the frontline engage and the backline, which of course AL we're going to need to be very, very aware of because they need that follow-up. Also, the Ivan can have very intricate early pathing. We've seen players like Tien pick it up recently. WeiWei, one of the only historical Ivan players in the LPL. It's not really a pick that we've loved a lot here, but WeiWei has played it from time to time. He's pulled it out a fair amount last year on Weibo when it was asked of him. So I want to see what WeiWei does with his early pathing and whether Croco can read it. Croco's early game has not been where he has succeeded so far, and he'll need to have himself a strong start here. He's going to give himself the super clear, set himself a couple of marks, and he'll clear himself back towards them afterwards. So you, of course, as the Ivan, you don't actually have to stick around and kill the camps. You just have to put the mark down, cost you a bit of health and mana to do so, and you can go clear through them in one fell swoop.
I think the part that worries me, and we'll see as resources start getting delved out, is that anyone's legend have a pretty singular point of late game damage in Shanks, and that can be pretty easily countered by a lot of the damage profile that LNG have. But that is something that's going to come to bear later on as well. So all eyes on Shanks against Scout, honestly, as well.
I think both these mid laners deserve that, absolutely. And Shanks in that last game wasn't necessarily the main character in the way that he was in the group stage. Shanks was excellent. This guy was so good. He's struggled a little bit more, and Shanks is a player that's been trying to break into that upper echelons of the LPL mid lane, like that elite club for a long time. Scout on the other side, though, he's been there for a long time. 800 games in the LPL, fourth of all time, just behind rookie Xiao, who
just behind.
The crazy thing to me is so many of those in the top 10.
Games.
So many of those people on the top 10 are still active right now on some teams. It's great to see them still competing at this point. And Scout, he's been at the top of the tree for such a long time. Ever since he joined EDG back in 2016, and now of course went over to LNG in the last in 2023. It's been so important to his teams.
And that's why we put a lot of pressure on Scout, because you have to remember he had double MVP splits in 2023, and that doesn't come easy in the LPL with the amount of legacy we have and the amount of players that are just popping off all the time. And I think we want to see that kind of shoring up of the side lane from Scout, that shoring up of maybe some of that weakness that has been exposed for LNG. We are looking at the culminations of these first paths, though, both junglers heavily hovering over this mid lane.
As they should. Make sure that one of these gets a better recall, if they can do. Things to note as well. One thing which I'm going to keep an eye on too is the item build from WeiWei. Of course, Redemption, very, very good on the Ivan, but this is a really good game to go towards something like that. Kael's Hunt goes in, forces that cleanse, and if you get that Kael's early enough, it can shrug off that Sejuani ultimate, which can really tear apart AL's composition and leave it really about whether you can get cheap Kael's out then from like a Jhin W, which forces that, or Shanks with an ultimate. Need to see whether WeiWei can get to that item in an important breakpoint. I think that should be in his build at some point. It's just about where he fits into it.
I get so worried when you start seeing some of their spells be burned by Jins in the laning phase, though, especially against a Xayah and Leona. Maybe that cleanse might come to where he still has the flash. Still has one of his escape tools. We'll see if they want to revisit that 2v2 down there. There is the dragon coming up in about 40 seconds. Obviously, last game, the early dragons took a heavy priority for Croco because he was literally a dragon. This time around might be a little bit different, though, looking at the priorities that we have in lanes.
Yeah, I think particularly for the side of AL, they will maybe try and sack off one of these objectives and try and see if they can get themselves a kill in a lane if it's all possible. Because Sejuani does have that early burst damage, you can definitely aim towards that if it's all possible. WeiWei is going into that bot side river. Blue side is quite hard to do Dragon on, especially when you're someone that can't cross balls easily like the Ivan, which means they're going through lane, force the flash.
Oh, well, there's the other one I said that you don't want to see being burned. See if Hope is able to navigate that. Oh, Ala being cooked on the backside. Still does have TP to get back. He's going to try to get that one off right now, but the push is going to continue. Meanwhile, the push in bot side has left open some room to go back into a re-clear for WeiWei.
Yeah, WeiWei is doing completely fine in this early game, and you can see that the solo lanes from LNG getting decent push where they want to, gives LNG some different options to play around. And yeah, you were right in kind of saying that these objectives, it's quite hard to go towards them in this early game sometimes. So, you know, they are up, but it's like, well, okay, where are we focusing on these? Both these junglers kind of want to be playing around teammates rather than playing by themselves. Very different archetype from the Zyra, Brand, Carthus. You can kind of just hoover through whatever you put in front of them. And a lot of the time, there's team setups for them. This is the other side. Typically, throughout jungle's history in pro play, junglers set up for their lanes more often than not. We've had some different cases where that wasn't the case. We had, you know, Kiana, Camille, big carries. When you have stuff like the Sejuani Ivan, you really are playing for your teammates. You have to have this conversation back and forth between who can move and make sure that you are supporting them.
Shanks hovering on bot side while anyone's legend take the dragon. The grubs are going to be started up by WeiWei on the other side with Scout leaning that direction as well. There's going to be a repath up towards top side by Croco. They might be able to get the tag end of this one at the back end, but it is already the push from Zika going to kind of equalize that one, if not the ultimate used.
So, let's have a think about where the first fights of the game are going to come into. We don't have level 6s from supports yet. Of course, when you have Solar Flare, things get very, very easy to force plays. That's one of the reasons why Leona is really good right now. Very tanky, but also just really good at forcing fights. And don't always have to die for it either. Someone like the Nautilus, if you throw the hook, you kind of feel bad. And of course, someone like a Rel, yeah, once you're in, you're in. Leona's kind of been best of most worlds for the support. You're very tanky, you have a good laning phase. And with the lack of tenacity now in the game as well, you're not kind of reduced to nothing by you know, Legends tenacity plus the unflinching or whatever the resolve tree was as well. You're pretty happy just going to keep that CC later and later into the game.
Yeah. I will say, just taking stock of some of like what we'll see initiate a lot of these fights, like WeiWei does have some kind of engage for his team, but you're really just looking at Hung for those instant turnarounds once he gets to that level 6. You have a couple options on the other side for anyone's legend with Croco and Kael, though. So they will have a couple more avenues forward here. Zika not actually going to get hit by the Arctic Assault. Does end up burning the flash anyways, though.
Has to flash out from the W2. Would have been that stun, and that would have been pretty bad news. Still have the Glacial Prison as well. WeiWei pulls out Daisy, sees what she can do in wreaking havoc in bot side. Might just zone them out here, and bullies them off.
And Jin hates Daisy because 4 shots is not enough to break a rock, or at this point, a cupcake. Honestly, I feel like 4 shots should be able to break a cupcake, but maybe not. Maybe it's just really hard cupcake. It's like one of those cupcakes that's been sitting in the like work break room for like a month or something.
Yeah, it's like, you know, apparently the difference between a biscuit and a cake is whether it goes like stale. Well, whether it goes like stale in terms of when it goes stale, does it go like soft or like hard? Pretty sure that cakes they go rock hard. So like that's the worst one for them. As Zika, he might be more easy pickings in this top side. He has no flash this time.
Oh, he's gonna use the equalizer on the wave, try to clear it down. It's not gonna be fast enough, and he is just cooked under his own turret. Croco almost going down there, but that's first blood for anyone's legend.
Early burst damage coming out of the Sejuani right there. He has himself the double point for Passive, but because Scout was roaming up, Croco also has to flash away from that wall. If he took the long way around, Scout might have been able to jump onto him and get a kill. So, flashes out. It's still going to be Zika picking up most of the wave, but the kill going to Arlo is really, really nice. If Cassante gets ahead of the matchup, it gets so much easier. You can get yourself towards that first Merc Treads by towards a Kianic Rooker, and if you get that early enough, it really impacts that laning phase. So, high-value gank there from Croco. Gets something onto Zika, who... I think Zika has been somewhat of an unsung hero at points for LNG, but recently hasn't looked nearly as solid. I was a big Zika defender earlier in the year, even in spring, when LNG looked not great. But I think when we come through into bits of the Rumble stage, I mean, Zika, yeah, even though he was a huge pickup for this team, on paper, I suppose he was a huge buyout when he came over to LNG in 2023. He's in this summer rather, he's kind of struggled to have that same value. Even in the last one, he had some decent team fights on the Cassante, but he's not been quite the game-changing player he has been at other points for LNG.
And they'd be layering a lot of his damage down in these team fights because he's going to be a major point of their kind of AoE or separation of anyone's Legends composition once we get into those 5-on-5s. But we're getting a little bit closer. We're inching towards that here. We are going to have first item spikes at least coming through for WeiWei. The Moonstone, a little bit cheaper of an item. But there is also a question of repositioning for this grub priority. LNG have already gotten 3. They're looking at a second grub again in as many games. And they're going to put all bodies up here, TP even from Scout in the mid lane to push out.
The real hobbits of grub again. But what about a second one? Don't think he's hit. Anyway, see if they can get towards that. They do have themselves powerful ultimates coming back off a cooldown, particularly that, of course, that equalizer. That's the one which was used a little earlier. Get the top lane push. Scout going to go into mid lane and see if they can achieve the same thing. WeiWei just looking to maintain the lanes right now, but Croco and Kael off vision.
There's the drifting. They got the quickness combo there and the credits. Oh my god, Zika's just in a bounce house, and it's not for a birthday party, it's for his death.
LNG, slower to the punch. Croco and Kael, they have not been great recently as a jungle support duo, but they move first there and they get themselves an important kill, which leaves them openings towards this top side of the map. Zika won't have his teleport when he comes up in 10 seconds, and he's already used his equalizer. LNG, they do have less ultimates to face because Croco and Kael spent them, but I still don't think they want to take the 4v5.
WeiWei not going to have as much agency there. There's the blade caller, though. We said this matchup could get a little dicey for the Jhin. We see, though, in the other side, Grubs. 1 taken by anyone's legend. 4 still on the table and grabbed by WeiWei. AL not confident to step up in that regard. They will end up losing at least some might spawns over to LNG.
Yeah, they stopped the 6 Grubs going over. It's still pretty powerful. Jump in mid lane, forcing the ult out, and that's going to be the end of that. So Shanks ult down. LNG at least get themselves that objective. I don't know exactly how easily they're going to be able to hit towers consistently through this game, because Zika has been put quite far behind comparative to what you should be with this matchup. Even after the nerfed Rumble, you should still be ahead in the early game here. I don't know how easy it is going to be for them to hit the turrets and use these Grubs in the way that they would like to, because that's the thing about Grubs, and I think there's a conversation to be had, and mentioned it once or twice before, how I feel like LPL never really massively transitioned well away from the double heralds away from Grubs. They've gotten better at it, but double herald really messes the way that you play around your macro. And when you get those Grubs now, it is all about how you then utilize them after that point. We've seen teams plenty of times get 5-6 Grubs and then stall out because they can't actually get the point where they get the tower trades that they want to do, and they can win out on them because they have that extra tower damage. And LNG will have to showcase that they can do that in this game. Dragon being started by AL. Not sure there's going to be a huge contest from LNG. Gala's not in position just yet.
Already further down than half health here. It might be a spy fight, though. Croco not willing to go capitalize on this one. Is going to be pushed out at the end, and now Croco is getting locked down, too. They actually had to fight on the other side, though. Scout in some trouble, as now he jumps away. Shanks is going out with his own flash, but now he might be going out in his own body bag, too. Zika helps get it, but it's going to be Gala that secures the kills in LNG. They're streaming forward. They've already gotten 2 kills for Gala, but he's not back in this fight just yet. Allah by himself now over here on the other side of the fight, trying to get a pull down onto Hung. He's going to try to get his Q3 knockback. He's in trouble now. Curtain call going to be opened up, but is it going to be in time? Allah able to dash away. The equalizer going to be used in the end by Zika.
I thought that Allah would use his W just before that, and the Daisy had cancelled it. Might have just been the footwork dash that was cancelled, so Allah gets out, doesn't have to blow that flash. AL still get themselves the Dragon. That's important for them, and of course on an Infernal Rift, you'll absolutely take one step closer towards getting that objective. Gala's going to get his back stopped. Shame there for him. Gets himself those 2 kills, though, and Gala on this side is going to be a real pain. Either of these AD carries getting ahead and getting towards an earlier Lord Dominus Regards or a Kraken Slayer or something like that is going to be a big, big problem. Croco gets caught in the back of the pit. Not exactly sure what's happening in terms of the actual smite fight. WeiWei doesn't have smite right on the... I thought he ended up having it, but of course he didn't right there. So it's going to be Croco taking that one before he goes down. I love the flash of the Blasco from Hug, just to make sure there's no way out from Shanks. Shanks is probably not that efficient. I'm not sure it would have saved him anyway, but I appreciate the thought. Use your flash for that Blasco kill.
Why not? And honestly, it's a really good pullback from LNG because they had already lost a couple kills over to AL, but they can answer now in kind. 2 kills straight to Gala. Now, we did see this in game number 1, but this time he's on the Xayah. Going to be a lot more safe and has hit the Kraken Slayer spike for himself, so that's going to be really big.
And particularly because Hope is really far down into gold now. Like, Jhin, I think, is completely fine if you snowball and you're not against that tanky of a team. Hasn't snowballed. And when you're against that Ivern, the shields do make it a lot harder to unlock your execute damage. That's where a lot of Jhin's damage comes from. Herald is being started up. There is a solar flare from Hung, but they don't really have the positioning right now. LNG would rather elect to push out some of the lanes, which is exactly what they're going to go towards. AL will now have themselves a chance to throw that Herald down in one of these lanes, but LNG gets some control over those over top and bot, which was a big thing which they didn't have in that last game.
Getting to a point where let's see this mid-game transition from LNG. That was where some of the slip-ups were coming through for them last time around. They have found themselves a little bit more of a stable composition, and they still have a little bit of a lead here early. Look at back bot side turret, almost going down to LNG. Won't be able to get it just yet. We have moved the ADs back to mid lane here. At least the primary ADs. Oh, Hung. He is a Leona, I guess.
Yeah, he is a Leona. He does manage to just find that. Hope's not in this fight. He's resetting, so I don't really want to chase this over. So, yeah, last game, I was about to say yesterday, it's not that long ago, it was last game. One of the things that one of the criticisms we loved at LNG is that their mid-game was a little bit directionless, they got caught out quite a lot. The fact that they now have pushing side lanes, they have the 5 grubs, and AL haven't been able to rock them from their tempo just yet, is a good side for LNG. They do have themselves a marginal gold lead. You know, 1.5k, 15 minutes, it's not bad. They have given over that Herald, and they have given over the Dragon, so it's not that huge. AL can definitely get themselves some win conditions through their own objectives. But if they get themselves pushing side lanes with 5 grubs, that's LNG's comfort zone. We kind of discovered this about them last year in 2023 when, of course, Scout came over to that roster, left EDG. It was one of the huge moves. Last year was a huge year in general for players moving away from their legacy organizations. You know, you had Xiaohu moving from RNG, Scout moving away from EDG. Mako, of course, this year has now completed off that kind of set of things by leaving EDG and going to top esports. A lot of our franchise players have gone about the place, but Scout brought his style with him to LNG. This team is so much about how Scout can get into side lane. He's going to go again, get himself that grub off on tower. He's going to open up this side lane himself. Shanks is going to trade for some pressure on that tower on the other side of the map, and the mid lane is getting a lot of gold.
Just where you want it, into the Tristana of this competition. Be pretty stable as we move forward to LNG's siege on mid lane, looking for an outer tower here. Be a bit of a response coming in as Kael is in trouble. Does have the dash out, but he's burning, and there you go. Tick, tick, boom. Hung comes up with the kill. Curtain call. That's not going to be nearly enough to pick up anything there, as a turret does go down for anyone's legend on top side. Croco might be caught out and transitioned here, but the Rift Herald did end up getting used. They are going to get a charge on tier 2 as well.
Yeah, are they going to overstay this? I think they might have stayed a bit too far. Kael's not here. I was wondering if WeiWei could come up. There's not going to be a teleport just yet. I was wondering if Scout would come to join that party, but nope, not to be. AL, they get away with that one. They get themselves another charge into that inner turret as well. So, LNG extend the gold lead just a little bit. It's not exploded again, but they're getting themselves to important breakpoints. The Kael cashed in onto Scout. He's going to get himself to a second item a little quicker. I think in this game, getting second item on both Scout and Gala, and third item particularly, once you get towards that Lord Dominates regards, you can cut through Croco and Ala is going to be so powerful. Dragon has now started. We have had a couple of resets come through. Very good point of power for Scout and Gala.
I just don't know if there's enough damage for anyone's legend to put up a fight just yet. We all talked about how much the centralized damage position is that mid lane for Shanks. And he looked to contest. This would be a soul point for AL. Actually force Scout away there, though. Shanks going to heal up a bit. They go for the engage. Hung going to burn his flash, at least, to get out of that one. Re-engage with the Solar Flare. Going to go a bit wide there, though. Turret is being taken to the side. They're going to get the TP coming in from Zika. Dragon is the focus for anyone's legend. This would be Soul Point and Infernal Soul. Gala, he's going to burn that Featherstorm. Going to try to get the big Blade Caller, too. They're blocking them out, but the Equalizer, they are getting blocked out themselves now. The Dragon goes to none other than Gala. Here comes the Fate Seal from Shanks. He's the damage, but he's gone. And now LNG, they need to pick up the scraps, but look at Hope. He's popping off now, too, and 2 kills have gone the way of Ala as well. Hope still full health. Hope with the dancing grenade up there as well. Double kill goes to them, and AL out of nothing make miracles.
LNG get the Dragon, but they lose the fight. Gala's not going to get ulted. He's surely going down.
Oh, he's getting one back, though. That's huge, but 4th shot's the charm, and Hope, he has 3 kills now to match Gala.
And they're going to get themselves maybe this mid lane outer turret too. So AL get themselves a whole load of kills. They don't get them soul point, but they get themselves a lot of gold again. Once again, LNG, their team fights are looking really quite poor today. They do have themselves the pushing side lanes this time. That's typically been their answer towards a lot of these team fights. Gala, in this one, blows himself the cleanse early, uses that Featherstorm early. I thought that the Equalizer and the Featherstorm was still pretty good though. Comes through to Gala, killing with an auto attack of all things, but you know, at the end of this, I'm very surprised that LNG couldn't peel back, but the front line doesn't really have the HP. Daisy was misused before this, they don't have that from Ivan. I think that just between misusing the Solar Flare and misusing Daisy as well, LNG just hadn't got themselves that either lockdown or pseudo frontline from that ultimate of Ivan to make the difference and give their carries an easier time.
I love the patience that the calculated sniper had for Hope. I mean, the way that he navigated, literally, Jin's perfect place is to clean up after everybody's already low. And we saw him navigate the fight. He was still full health going into that last engage. Really nice stuff from him, but it's still an LNG that have a much more damage-heavy composition, I'll just say it right now, as 2 items have come across for both Scout and Gala.
Yeah, those Flicker Blades give you a huge point of power for LNG. Do you really want to point out again, though, that Hope, well, not again for the first time, because he's just bought it now, he goes for the Serpent's Fang, second item, so that means that the shields coming in from WeiWei are going to be a lot less valuable. It means if you hit someone with that W, which you can do onto any picked target, their shields are going to be much less valuable. WeiWei, he did initially buy up that Kael's as a second item, chose to go towards the Redemption for the AoE healing instead, try and get himself the maximum value for just getting people up to higher amounts of HP across the team instead of shrugging off that Sejuani ultimate. Wouldn't surprise me to see that Kael's coming in as a third item anyway. But those items, there's a lot of thought put behind them, I think, in this case. I think that these ones have been considered quite a lot. I think LNG at this point, they're probably waiting until 3 items until they can get Last Whispers in for Scout and Gala. I think at that point, then the damage becomes really, really quite hard to ignore from AL. But they need to now get to that point, and I say that because AL just had a great last fight. They get themselves onto that second dragon. If they can get themselves towards Soul Point in 2 minutes before those items are built up from Gala and Scout, I think LNG might be in a bit of trouble around these team fights again.
I said I was a little worried about their damage profile now, but I think Cassante is also starting to show his teeth against this composition that is pretty squishy on the end of fights here. So Ala now on 2 items himself, going to have a lot of tankiness to his name and a lot of say in how he can access the backline. We said from the beginning, AL need to find access on the backline. The front to back is going to be LNG's bread and butter.
And I think those front to backs become, it puts even more responsibility onto WeiWei on the Ivan. Yes, you have your shields, but honestly, the Daisy positioning and the Daisy micro needs to be great this game. You don't have a true tank outside of that Leona, and Leona is, tanky and is very tanky, but it's only one person, and people can avoid that. Croco is now going towards top side. There might be a teleport coming in. There was a ward drop. Frick, Ala, 3s are ensued. Could potentially go towards that one, taking the bot lane turret instead, and the fight's not been called just yet. Might have to come right now, though.
Hung goes in. Shanks, he's looking for a little bit of extra damage there. Nothing else going to come of it. No TP pulled. Ala staying in the side lane, trying to push this one down and do a tier 2. LNG, they were trying to get some tools used out of anyone's Legends pockets, but they don't end up getting it.
Yeah, that's good discipline by Ala. Gets himself that gold. Yeah, he's so far ahead of that Rumble matchup. And
yeah,
Rumble, yes, look, Rumble's been nerfed. Should not be there behind 2,000 gold to the Cassante. Zuka's going to go towards the Leandri's Riftmaker build, which means that you have a huge amount of extended damage in that kind of anti-tank matchup. You probably go towards a Crypt Bloom afterwards as well. It does mean he's going to have less teamfight impact, and he's also just behind the curve. He's not going to have that same kind of shred equalizer across the entire team, which LNG would really like to have around about now. Dragon's coming up as it stands. You have 2.5 items in Ala, which is a full item up on Zuka, and that lacking damage could be a big difference.
I mean, they are not ready for this. If they do lose Hung, that's a massive front line. The only real front line that LNG can handle with. The Dragon coming down from its perch. LNG already able to take the last Infernal Dragon, but AL, they are putting this one down. The TP going to come in. It's a little bit late. Hung trying to get over here for an engage. WeiWei is not going to be in the pit for the Dragon. Afterwards, though, Daisy is tanking up a storm, but about to go down as well. Hope going to burn some shots into it. There's the Glacial Prison used. Scout buffering it out beautifully now. Re-engage. Oh, looking for a big Fate Seal, but is it going to be just the pick out? Re-engage with the great interest. There's that Fate Seal, but it's not going to be enough. That's actually explosive charge there, rather. Gala doesn't end up getting the big blade caller. AL make it out after flashing. They do lose Shanks, and it looks like LNG, they're getting opened up on, but they're still taking enough to bear this one.
I think he's trying to take some chunks out so they can't immediately go towards Baron. LNG were going towards it, but with the slow from the ultimate and some of that damage, I think LNG have been dissuaded potentially. There are still some pings on tip. They'll take the Scuttle Crab and they'll get out. So grand cost of that play, or rather kind of everything towards it. Scout, I guess using the flicker blades. Scout was late towards that fight. He did get himself that last Whisper, and he did get a lot of damage out there. The Tristana, the buffer out was very important, but the grand tally on both sides. You get, of course, the Dragon over to anyone's Legend, but the kills go to LNG this time. Daisy being trying to use the Scaffolds. I've not loved the Daisy usage so far. You can tell how important it is to block that front line, but it's not really doing that much, dying very, very easily. Now in picture, now the Baron started by anyone's Legend. That could be also on the table.
They have those second item spikes themselves. Daisy coming back into the fold. It's a 6v5, but the Baron getting low. So who's going to go in for the smite? Is it going to be a 50-50? They go for the fight, though. Here comes Shanks. Glacial Prison goes a little bit wide. AL, they need to back out of this one. This is a front-to-back that they are losing.
As we said,
they get it, and that's 4,000 on the Baron. That is anyone's Legend. Losing control, Croco. He needs to save them, but he's not even going to try. An LNG move in, clear out, and that's a Baron buff for all 5.
Oh, anyone's legend. It felt like the fights were going well for them recently. Their objectives are going well because they got themselves that Infernal Soul point, but then they just end up leashing the Baron over to LNG. They don't manage to catch LNG off guard. Maybe they were thinking they had better resets than them. Clearly not. LNG walk away with all 5 Barons, and that time you could see how gnarly it is getting locked up by the Leona, Ivan when the Root Caller hits, and Daisy starts getting the knockups after that point. LNG just got themselves gift-wrapped that objective, which might just see them through into that mid-game, well, into the late game now, I suppose, at this point, that they couldn't find that last game.
It's looking much more like the standard LNG, the one that has gone to 3 games, but has lost some game 1s very horrifically. Think back to that LGD series. Now on the siege into the tier 2 in mid lane. Already going to claim that gold. They still have Baron buff for another 2 minutes. The side lane is starting to push a little bit there too. They already have Scout and bot lane. It's looking like a full court press here, but Anyone's Legend, they want to collapse a little bit. This is a pretty good fight for Anyone's Legend. The curtain call is going to be doing a decent amount of spacing here. Zika gets sniped by Hope. And now they get engaged by Daisy there in the end, using that tool very well. Hope still functioning here, but the Baron siege is going to continue, and they do get ending up a little bit of gold back for AL.
Man, the last couple of fights, the value which WeiWei has brought has been absolutely absurd. The redemption very nearly saved Zucker. It did save Hung in that last dragon fight, but it isn't quite enough there because Zucker was so out of position. Zucker continuing to have not a great series. Game 1 on the Kasance wasn't really getting the team fight value he wanted. Now on the Rumble, just not in the right position. He's not tanky enough. And the pick value from such a long range is really, really high. The redemption saves Zucker for an extra shot, but then he flashes not behind his teammates and gets hit by that last shot. Hope, really good accuracy on that Jhin and getting some value out of this pick. In quite a difficult game for the Jhin. He's ended up 4-0-2. Still behind Gala in terms of gold, but Hope's accuracy at least picking up some slack.
The unfortunate thing is it's just not the same as a Tristana and a Xayah being at 3 items as if the Jhin was. And it is going to be nice to see how Hope weaves through these fights. Again, the cleanups, that angle, it is still always there, and we've seen him really navigate these well. And the other thing going for Anyone's Legend is they will have the decision-making power around this dragon. They are on soul point. They could go for the Infernal Soul. Still about 30 seconds on the Baron buff here for LNG to get push priority, though.
Yeah, and that can definitely help because LNG, they have looked so much better at team fights when they have that push before the objective. They're not great at kind of like cheating their way into the river and kind of like using one last wave to get in there. LNG, compared to the other top teams, that's been one of the things which is really they've struggled with more than those other teams the most. We do have so many big items, as you're calling out. And I also want to just say again that the Mikhails has come through from WeiWei. There is also going to be that Mikhails coming through from Kael, which can potentially help with the Leona Solar Flare and disengaging from that too. So watch out for those extra cleansers across the team. The Ivan value has been huge so far. AL, of course, they don't have to take the next dragon because they gave up the push on the other side. I think they wisely decided, look, let's just not chance it. Let's go get some side lane gold, get themselves that extra gold onto Shanks, who's going to go towards this inner turret and take that one down.
It's a lot of standing gold given back over, and a chunk of the lead given back, a little bit at least. That dragon being taken over there, going to be a nice time buy, at least for these marksmen to get even further ahead. I think that's the other scary thing for LNG is their composition gets just so much scarier as time goes on. But I think you could say the same a little bit in some regards for AL, but my goodness, when you think about these carries getting full items and how you can somehow manage these fights, it's very difficult.
So, no soul, Baron's off. 2 minutes until objectives are here. I think we've got ourselves another chillin' with the chillin'. For those of you that don't know what a chillin' is, it's the mythical beast on LNG's logo. It's
you ever watch Harry Potter, like the newest Harry Potter? They have a chillin' in that too.
I know that it's kind of like a dragon with kind of like the elk horns and stuff, isn't it? It's got like little, it's like a horned dragon. It's very cool.
It is really cool. Also, LNG have done a really good job of like their Hope Arena. It's all branded up with the chillin', like the Hope. As soon as we load into Summoner's Rift, it's really cool. LNG maybe get a little bit of that energy from the crowd here for this game number 2. We'll bring it back as a very important series for them. Try to lock top 2. They have Shanks over there. Scout jumps out. Oh, no. Kael just trying to get away from Harm's breath. Does take the explosive charge on the back end from Shanks is holding it. And LNG take a tier 2 at topside. They are...
Croco's Croco's looking towards bot side again. This is why it's the crossbow. And the problem here is that there's a Tristana on one side with 5 grubs, and you also have the Ivern shields too. You can see that, you know, it's easy take up there. That's going to be a stop in the back from Hung, so he's not, but it's not going to lead to that much. Bit of a cheap ult thrown out by Jin. Briefly at that moment, see, yeah, LNG, maybe they could use those 5 grubs. They do get themselves a cheap inner turret, I suppose, and he gets a lot of gold onto Scout. He's gone towards that Vamp Scepter, probably going towards Bloodthirst the last. This is what ended up happening there. That was almost a great catch by Hung there with that ult. So.
Just a little bit too early, but close, and maybe looking for the next one. Now we are really just waiting on this 3rd item spike for Shanks. I don't even know if it's going to be enough at this point, but that is the big break potential for Shanks on the Yone. He is that kind of singular carry, even though there's a 4-0-2 Jin on the other side for the other carry for AL. It is really about that sustained damage that you're going to need, and there is the Randuin's completed for Shanks. So a little bit more tankiness and a 4th item for Hope. So maybe a little bit of hope over to AL.
I love how Shanks just completely disrespects Zika, saying, okay, you're not doing that much damage, I'm not going to buy magic resist. Goes towards that equalizer, goes towards the Randuin's Establish, which will help against the double AD carries, because that's his real primary target. I think he's really telegraphed what he's doing in fights with that build, which is exactly what he should be doing anyway. No surprises there. Recaller of the wall will help. Ola is still pretty tanky on this Kasansei. Is he going to be tanky enough to get through these very powerful double AD carries? Blacked up, though, by this Ivan. Going to be backing up very, very strongly with his own 3 and a bit items as well.
Yeah, I mean, both Gala and Scout, 4 items complete. Bloodthirster, first and foremost, for Scout is going to be a big sustained damage that he can keep going, as they're just going to take the multi-pronged engage here. Scout's looking like a frog just leaping over here, as it is a mid lane push they want to get. They continuously are hovering around this Baron to try to pull the play onto AL.
But I think now, without the Yone, I think LNG feel pretty happy, don't they? Daisy's up, they can go towards that Baron, and a lot of the backline access just went. Yeah, I think this is the go button. With Shanks falling out of position, I think a lot of the backline access went with it.
Look at Zika, he's staving off the entrance of AL. Croco in the back of the pit. There's never been a bigger chance to go for a 50-50. He's not going to get it. Gala denies him. Now he's just dead in the pit, too. Scout jumping all over AL. Hope is just a poor little Jin in a Tristana's world now, too. Shanks going in by himself. It's a double kill over to Gala. And LNG, the Chillin' has awoken from its sleep, and they will not go quietly into AL. That's a quadra kill for Gala.
The feathers fly, and LNG will bring us back to 1-1. It was a bit slower again. AL cannot match their performance from game 1. No Shyvana to save them this time as LNG march towards the base.
It's their home arena. It's them on the cusp of locking top 2 with the bye in their eyes. And they need this win over AL. And they'll bring us to match point. They'll bring us to an even scoreline in a best of 3.
LNG looked way more confident in that game. I think as soon as they unlocked the map, as soon as they got the ability to use that Tristana and the Rumble to push up, it made a lot of difference. Now, I don't think the Rumble affected the team fights in the way that they wanted to, but just the overall map setup and their mid into late game was so much more organized. They looked a lot more comfortable walking in towards those team fights around Dragons and the Baron, and there were some bright moments from AL, but they really couldn't deal with that backline because they just couldn't reach it through the Ivan, Shields, and the Leona.
Not enough damage, not enough carries, and not enough dragons apparently for them. They didn't have the Shyvana this time around. See if they can clean up their game a little bit. Or LNG are going to be looking at that bye. We are going